We are accountable for a vaccine that we receive directly from the federal government or from other entities, and then we hold, in turn, when we provide vaccine to a provider's office, say a pediatrician's office, we also hold them accountable for that vaccine as well, and this is the system that does that efficiently.
If we didn't have this IT system, and we've not since 1998, what would we be doing? What kind of waste would there be in the system if we're unable to track it properly?
Certainly. So there's certainly waste in terms of paper. Is one of the big ways that we have been moving. We've been running the program for a very long time for immunization, is really paper records moving back and forth, and I think many of us would agree that that is currently inefficient. Right now, with most of our providers who have electronic health records or electronic medical records, EHRs, EMRs, they're putting that information in their system. It would be more efficient for them to then have a connectivity to our immunization information system. That's something called an HL7. I don't have the same technical expertise as you, Representative Edwards, but I know enough that that allows one system to be able to talk to another system in the most secure and accurate way. And that is what much of this funds is going to right now, or what we would hope to, is to be able to help that connectivity so that we can get information efficiently, effectively, and securely between entities.
I have more follow-ups. I'm sorry, I should have been asking each time.
Let's let someone else, and then I'll come back to you, Representative.
Okay, I have about, just so you know, I have like 3 or 4
Okay,
more on
that's
the
fine.
fax registry.
That's fine. Are there any other questions? Senator Morris.
Madam Chair, I participated in 3 meetings this week, and I thought we were going to start this meeting today with a presentation by the department. One of those meetings, after everyone submitted questions, was very helpful in understanding the 2 parts, the $18 million, number 1 on the contracts. So it may answer a bunch of these questions if that's the way we handle this.
Thank you. So thank you, Senator Morris. So
Yeah, no problem.
great.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Chair. So I think what I could do is provide a very basic overview, and I appreciate the question, Senator Morris. This funding really does 4 major things. It provides some staff to the Department of Health and Human Services to manage the grant, do a little bit of communications, a little program management, but more importantly, it provides 10 individuals to help us with our data. And those individuals are going to be working directly with our pharmacies, with our healthcare providers, as they onboard this connectivity to our immunization information system, the IIS, or the registry.
Could you just explain what you mean by onboard?
Sure, great, thank you.
Not everyone understands that term.
Thank you for the question and the request for clarification. So onboarding is a process by which we ensure and test whether System A at a pharmacy, at a healthcare provider, is sending the information it's supposed to send to our system. And this is actually quite a long process. Sometimes it takes several months to get that done because it's a process of testing back and forth. We review the data, we make sure the data is accurate on each side. Most, again, as we know, 49 other states in the country have some sort of registry, and their experience is that this typically takes several years to be able to onboard all of their providers in the community. Unfortunately, in our case, when we were ready to go, after our statute was in place, our rules were in place, we were hit with sort of a 1-2 punch. We were ready to go with our registry, and we were hit with the COVID-19 pandemic at the same exact time. So the urgency of our work is greater than ever. So that is what onboarding is. It's the process of data testing, where we work intensively with folks in the Department of Health and Human Services, with the IT specialists in a number of providers' offices. We've provided this committee with a list of over 400 different healthcare providers that we are anticipating working with. So that's what one of the components of this funding will do, is to provide us with that staff. It's temporary staff. We anticipate needing them for up to about 36 months. Most of them will, hopefully, as we finish that onboarding process, we will no longer have the need for that same number of staff moving forward. The second thing that this funding does is it provides funding for actually data system enhancements. So again, we talked a little bit about HL7, that onboarding process, so it provides some funding for that. It also provides funding for data enhancements for things like managing temperature control, ensuring that we've really got a good bead and we can be accountable on not wasting any of the vital vaccine that we have. Again, this is not only COVID-19 vaccine, we're also talking about a vaccine for basic childhood immunizations, polio, measles, mumps, the sort of infectious diseases that most of us have never really encountered because of the effectiveness of vaccine. It will also do data enhancements that will help providers or people out in the community, folks like school nurses. School nurses will have the opportunity to have a special module that they can use because they are required to, and mandated by law, to ensure immunization of the students in their schools, or that at least we have record of that immunization. One of the pieces we hope to fund would be a portal specifically for school nurses so they can see just their student population as mandated by the statute, by rules. The third thing that this funding does is it puts resources directly into the hands of our healthcare providers. There are resources available for hospitals. There are resources available for unaffiliated healthcare practices. We had a question from the committee about what does the New Hampshire Medical Society have to do with this? And so we have determined that we would like to work closely with the Medical Society so that they in turn could work with those unaffiliated practices, those practices that are not part of big hospital systems. We're going to be working with those big hospital systems, and we're going to also be working with other pharmacies and others to ensure that they have the resources they need to be able to administer vaccine, do the IT work on their end with their EHRs, and ensure the accountability of that vaccine. Again, things like refrigerators, temps, managing that within their offices. The fourth thing that this project does, or these funds will do for us, is a little bit of education. And that's education and ongoing communications over the course of the next 3 years. Some of that is peer-to-peer learning between physicians and other physicians so that they can share information more effectively. As many people know, we currently at the department do twice monthly calls with our providers. We think moving forward over the next few years, some of that work will be better done from physician to physician through Dartmouth or another entity. So we would like to support that. We also have additional funds to doing other communications so that we can provide educational materials to our healthcare providers that are available in all the languages they need them to be and that address the questions that I know many people in the public have. So I think that's a high overview of the 4 main points of this funding.
Propaganda.
Thank you very much. So, were there any other questions other than the follow-ups that Representative Edwards has?
Madam Chair, I would, at the end of the question period, like to make a statement.
Okay. Representative Irvin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you point me to where in the RSA 141 C20 that it says it must be an opt-out system? When I read this, the registry, that law, 1998, it doesn't seem to require it be one way or the other.
Because it doesn't.
I don't have the statute in front of me right now. I have the rules in front of us where it does speak to that.
No, it doesn't.
I understand the rules state that very clearly, but the rules are not the legislation. Could you clarify where in the statute it says?
That's right.
I can pull up the statute in a minute. I can help point you to that. I just don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, I don't think that's right.
Thank you.
Take your time, no problem.
I'm not sure that I have the statute in front of me as I look through my notes.
I can give it to you if you like.
If you have it on your computer, I'd be happy to look at it. If that's okay with the chair.
That's perfectly all right.
There you go. Rules are not laws.
You can just come up. Oh. We're not gonna let her go. Don't worry about it.
Yes.
Do you have other questions that we can answer while I'm looking this up?
I think it's right there on the screen.
No, any other questions? So I can take a minute to read. That's why I was asking.
we just vote? Why don't we just vote?
So, Roman numeral 6C, and that's what I was just looking. It is the procedures for the patient or the patient's parent or guardian, if the patient is a minor, to decline to participate in the registry. That is what we have interpreted as an opt-out.
No,
Patient is a minor.
no, patient's a minor. No.
Fair enough, I guess I'd like to, and not now, but I'd like to hear that from an attorney, because it seems to me that the primary place, it's okay, the primary place where where that came in was in the rulemaking, and I totally agree that that's in the rulemaking, but if it really is just in the rulemaking, then it wouldn't possible for you to change that without any legislation.
Okay, well,
We would need attorney and counsel to tell us that.
okay, all right. Anything else from anyone? So Jess, you had, I'm sorry. Representative Edwards, you had some additional questions.
I do, thank you so much. So, okay, so as Representative Irv kind of kicked off the next area I wanted to get into about the VAX registry. And that is, this is the portion of the registry that has the public the most interested and to some extent upset is they believe that there was a requirement for us to collect some personal data and to transfer that personal data to the federal government. And there's this lingering perception that we opted to over-collect personal data well beyond what the federal government's requirements were. And so the belief is that New Hampshire is surrendering patient privacy, that we really had no requirement to do so. And I was wondering if you could speak to that, of whether or not we are strictly limiting the collection and transfer to the minimum essential data set required by federal statute, or alternatively, if we decided individually to enhance that data collection.
Thank you for that question. So in terms of what we send to the CDC, specifically around COVID-19, we actually send aggregate data. They have asked us for individual line level data. We, as the Department of Health and Human Services, have sent them aggregate data. So in fact, less information than the federal government requires.
So thank you for that. Could you speak to the other part of it though, which is, are we in our database intending to collect more data than what's required by the federal mandate, or for our own purposes? Are we over-collecting?
Are you asking in terms of, are we over-collecting for the information that we need here within the Department of Health and Human Services, not that we're sending out? Is that, I'm trying to clarify.
Basically, you're saying what we need. I would say what we want, but it's a semantic.
Great. I would have to, I'm not prepared right now to do a line by line of all of the data elements. I'm happy to do that. If we had had that question earlier, I could have been well prepared for that.
Sure, I've been sick, sorry. One more set.
Okay,
This is about the personnel. As you know, it's been my point of view that we have a severe workforce shortage in New Hampshire. And already today we've approved 4 or 5 additional slots for the department. And here's a big chunk of 13 more people. And it just brings up questions to me of where are we going to get these people? Can we really get them? Should we be trying to pull people out of the private sector now and putting them into government bureaucracy jobs?
We don't need a lecture or just, what is your question?
So my question is, Mr. Kane, would you help me form a tabling motion to table the 13 positions that are in this?
No.
Sure, so a couple options available to the committee for motions. If it was the intent of the member to pass the funding but not the positions, they would move to adopt 353 item 1 only and to deny item 2, which establishes the positions.
Okay, so I would like to move that the committee adopt item 1 on 353 and not item 2, and I can speak to that motion.
I need a second.
No, 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 no,
Seeing none?
no.
Okay.
Morse.
Senator Morris, seconds. You may speak to your motion.
Okay, Madam Chair, this is representative of a long-standing issue with our workforce crisis here in New Hampshire. I just see that we keep adding more and more and more bodies on paper where I just don't know where we're going to get them from, and even if we can get them, I think we're doing damage to the private sector by pulling human resources into the government. So rather than commit to bringing in yet another 13 people, I would just as soon let the money that would be allocated for those people be used for the other programmatics. I'm not saying we should cut the money, but I am saying that there's I'm not enthusiastic at all about adding 13 more people at this point.
Thank you. Are there any other discussion on this? Representative or Senator Morse?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. In fairness to the representative, he brought this up to me earlier today. And I do have concerns about vacancies in all the departments, not just this department. And I said that to the representative, and I said, I think that's something that the legislature is going to have to address in January, because if we have a 15% vacancy running in Health and Human Services, that's a lot of money. And we could have wrote the check for this, quite honestly, but I think that's something the legislature definitely has to come back and look at as we get into January, along with the fact that I've asked for a look at the capital to see how much money is left over from last year that I want to talk about. You're headed down the same pike that I think the Senate would go down. On this particular item, I'm not sure I accomplish anything by supporting you on not putting these 13 positions in when we're talking about 3,000 positions, Jess. That's the only thing. So I guess at this point I'm not prepared to go with that motion.
I appreciate that. I just am a believer that when you're in a hole, you just quit digging.
Are there any other comments on this particular motion? Okay.
Can I ask for an explanation for Mr. Kane? So does this mean that we are, if this passes, we'd be accepting part 1 and not part 2? No, it'd be a final vote on the whole package.
That is correct.
No,
Thank you.
no.
Madam Chair,
We,
can I withdraw my second and we'll solve that?
yes, you may. Okay, Senator Morris withdrew his second. So, Senator Gaida, did you want to say whatever you wanted to say now?
I think that would be appropriate, Madam Chair.
Okay,
I
fine.
thank you and I thank the committee for its indulgence. President Ronald Reagan once said that freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we'll spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men were free. This fiscal committee item has precipitated an incredible amount of public sentiment in opposition. And it may well be a defining vote for those in elected office, those on this committee. It is therefore deserving of our most careful scrutiny. The department is doing what it believes it must do. Its mission, and I quote, is to join communities and families in providing opportunities for citizens to achieve health and independence, end quote. And its intentions are clear. We are not the department. We are the elected representatives of the people that entrust to us their freedom, and the freedom of their children and of future generations, people in New Hampshire. As with all of us, my mission is, and I quote, to faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all duties incumbent on me as a state senator, according to the best of my abilities, agreeably to the rules and regulations of this Constitution and the laws of the state of New Hampshire, so help me God. To us falls the obligation of holding government accountable, of protecting and defending first and foremost the freedom of our citizens against the inevitable erosion that government is capable of producing, no matter the beneficence of its intentions. Our founding president, George Washington, made the statement, "Government is like fire. It's a wonderful servant, but a terrible master." Implicit in that statement is something that we as legislators often forget. Okay? Whether a program infringes on the natural and constitutional rights of our citizens, we as the elected guardians of the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness bear the grave responsibility not only to look at the efficacy of programs, but their actual and potential impact on the freedom of this and future generations. Before us today is an item in which the contract under consideration clearly articulates that the federal government can, and at an indeterminate time in the future, may impose limitations and conditions on this government and the people of New Hampshire. With all due respect to the opinion of Attorney General Formella, a distinguished legal scholar, I'm sure that the terms of the contract under consideration are not enforceable, and aware of the legal impotence of the non-binding resolution adopted by the Executive Council, it falls to this committee today to weigh the potential benefit of increased government efficiency in managing the details of an executive order that is under review for its constitutionality and the constitutional rights of that order as they affect the citizens of our state. I have served my country as an officer of Marines in places you cannot mention, in places you cannot pronounce, okay, and done things in the interests of our country. I've served as an FBI agent. I have seen the abuses that government can perform. I had the privilege of captaining incredible engines of commerce around the world. I have been in China. I've been in Hong Kong. I've been in Pakistan. I've been in Venezuela. I've been in all the places where government has gradually and ultimately completely encroached and destroyed the liberty of its citizens and the economics of their countries. I've been in China, where the government monitors and assesses the worthiness of citizens to partake in the benefits it doles out to them, where it decides whether or not citizens are deserving of employment, whether it decides how many children a family may bring into the world, where it controls every aspect of the lives of the people over which it rules. We'd like to believe our government, our federal government specifically, wouldn't do such things. Our federal government would never weaponize the IRS to audit those who differ in their political views, but it did. Our federal government would never order a sniper to murder Vicki Weaver, an unarmed woman with a child in her arms, based on warrants that were replete with misinformation.
Amen.
But it did. Our federal government would never ambush and kill a nonviolent man driving to meet a sheriff in the Mallard National Forest. But it did. And our federal government would never threaten to weaponize the FBI against parents who want their children educated and not indoctrinated.
Amen.
But it did. Our federal government would never force a person to take an experimental injection against their will as a condition of employment or continued service in the military. But it did. The contract before us states that data collected by the state is de-identified and aggregated before being sent to the federal government. But we have to ask ourselves in the first instance, Why is the state government even collecting this data, individually identifiable, to begin with? And why are the private entities giving these shots? Automatically sending detailed personal data to the federal government. Under the terms of the grant under consideration, the department states the data is de-identified and aggravated. Agreed. But under the terms of this very same agreement, the protection remains only until the CDC or another federal entity requires the disclosure of that identifiable data at some point in the future and for some purpose unknown to us and utterly beyond our control. I have no problem with what we're trying to do. I have a problem with the federal government. And the contract that will be signed as a part of this grant gives them unquestionably the authority to change the rules without a word out of us. The action we take today will be historic. It will be historic because we will either reject the notion of subservience to government coercion, or it will be historic because we accede to that notion and violate the most fundamental premises of freedom upon which our state and nation were founded, which are imperiled as never before us in our nation's history. I think you have a sense of where I'm going to vote on this. And I thank you for the indulgence in providing me the opportunity to speak, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
There will be no outbursts.
He spoke for us. He spoke for
Okay.
us. Thank you. Thank you.
So if you would, thank you very much for quieting down. Okay. Are there, Representative Daniels?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of the 500 to 600 emails that I have received on this item, 84% were against it. And they were against it for primarily two reasons. One of them was the sharing of data, the collection of data, not knowing where it's going to go. And through just the discussions we've heard today, no, it'll be known by the contractor, the state, the CDC, and even private organizations like the Medical Society. The problem is that when government at any level starts collecting our data, we tend to lose our individual sovereignty. And therefore we begin to distrust the government that's supposed to be working for us. To carry on, we also are asked to sign this contract. It's a blank piece of paper that says that you're agreeing to whatever we, the federal government, are dictating now and in the future. We don't know what that's going to be. That's exactly the reason we turned this down 2 months ago. There is nothing in this proposal that has changed from 2 months ago, except that you're adding one more position as a program manager. I don't think there's anyone in here that would responsibly sign a piece of paper for a job or anything else, not knowing what is going to be written on there that you're going to be held committed to. For that reason, I will be voting against this. I don't see any reason that I should change my vote from what it was 2 months ago when we tabled it. I was hoping to get more information, particularly, I believe a comment was raised before, we'll take the language out. And the answer was we can't do that because it's federal language. We have a letter from the Attorney General saying that, well, the language in there doesn't mean what it means. If we treat every piece of legislation in the same way, then what are we doing by passing legislation and somebody interpreting it that we don't really mean what we're saying? So if we're going to get back to basics and start putting things, and if it's in black and white, understanding that that's what it means,